Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana set to table his 2026 budget today. Let's continue with our coverage from Cape Town. My colleague Iman Rapeti standing by. Iman, who can forget just about a year ago the kind of political reaction we saw to the budget speech then? How is it different this year?
Yeah, it was so interesting because I remember, after we heard the first iteration and all of the reactions, there was backslapping in certain quarters, harsh and fierce criticism in others. Then they went back to the drawing board. Then there was another. Still no dice until a third time. We're expecting not to see a repeat of those scenes to my left, which is where the dome is situated. But I want us to think about this budget, Michelle, as if we were children with our Christmas wish expectations. Now, we might want a lot of different things, but there's some things we want specifically. And that's really how I'm going to foreground my question for ActionSA's MP Alan Beesley, because what they care a lot about and what we've seen over the last few days is what they refer to as catastrophic job losses in South Africa's informal economy, particularly township entrepreneurs. So that's where I want to pick up with Alan this morning. Good morning, thanks for your time, I really do appreciate it. We can get into some of the other big asks that you have of Enoch Godongwana. Why does this matter so much? And why are you concerned that when we talk about actual job creation, the numbers are tinier than the country might realize?
Now, most definitely, we've got 12 million people unemployed in our country, and Martin Luther King Jr. talked about unemployment as psychological murder, because it deprives people of their agency, their purpose, and their hope. So essentially in South Africa, every day, 12 million people are being psychologically murdered. And we can't wait for big companies to create jobs. We must allow people to employ themselves. And the problem is that there's just so much red tape, so much bureaucracy that's actually killing the informal sector, killing small jobs, and we must allow people to create jobs to be able to look after themselves, look after their families. And at the moment, it seems like government is against small business, against SMEs, against the township economy, and that needs to change.
Look, in terms of everyone I've been talking to this morning, Alan, it's really easy to make marquee statements. When we look under the hood a bit closer, we realize the complexities. When you talk about bureaucracies, we've had an issue with, for example, spaza shops, a major opportunity for the economy, but we do need a level of red tape to ensure that the people are providing good, honest products for local communities, that they are managed in a way that they can be accounted for in this economy. How do you strike that balance between not holding them up in red tape, but making sure things are run as they should?
It's definitely about getting the balance right, but at the moment the balance has just gone too far. I'm a professional person. For me to get a business forms going is just so complex. We must just make it so much easier, so streamlined, but there needs to be regulations in place, but there needs to be a balance. And at the moment, we've gone too far. And we're coming up with the slogan is that red tape must fall. It must fall. It's just making it so much harder and harder for businesses. There needs to be, but the problem that you're talking about, the spaza shop selling the wrong product, that comes down to enforcement, and that comes to the illicit trade, and hopefully I can talk about that later at the moment, because there's no enforcement at the moment, and government policies at the moment is actually allowing that to grow as opposed to actually, and I think it would be wrong to link spaza shops and small businesses with illicit trade and illegal product, because I think that's wrong, and I think that denies people of the opportunities.
So let's get into some of the detail then. As ActionSA, what's your blueprint to get the township economy moving? And what might we need to see in this budget that will enable that to happen?
Yeah, again, it's reducing red tape, because it's just so difficult, as we say, for people to get businesses going, and also to give them support too. At the moment, we're just wasting so much money in corruption and wastage. If that money went towards where we can get economic growth going, that will make such a huge difference. So if we can cut down the corruption and wastages in the system and direct it into an engine that can create economic growth, we can actually change this country. But at the moment, until money is directed into the right areas to get economic growth, we'll never get economic growth going.
I mean, it's no secret ActionSA has also been really involved in the debate around undocumented foreigners in the country. And again, the jury's out on the data that supports whether they are replacing South Africans in the job market or taking away jobs and opportunities. But there is certainly a very strong cohort of South Africans that do live and experience that. and it's led to protests. It's led to them asking government to be in charge of the situation rather than leaving citizens to deal with it. So talk to us about that as one of the marquee things that you want to see. I mean, we saw some news this week around DOH, for example, Department of Home Affairs, and holding their own officials' feet to the fire in rooting out corruption.
So, I live in Durban, but when I come down to Cape Town Parliament, I stay in the CBD, and I can tell you every single spaza shop is run by a foreign person, and whether they're illegal or legal, I actually don't know, but I actually don't know how they come into the country because they can't speak English. Everything is about cash money, so that money's not in the system. So they are denying South Africans of jobs because they've taken over the spaza shops here in the Cape Town CBD. I mean, wherever you go, it's either it's a Pakistan national or Somali national, and so and whenever I get an Uber, 80-90% of them are foreigners too. So how they actually got into the country, and the problem is that the money is not staying in the country, it's leaving the country. So it's actually not helping our economic growth because the money, it's all cash money, it leaves the country, so it's actually not being circulated in our economy. So that's actually worse. We're denying South Africans of jobs, but the money's leaving our country too.
I just want to quickly circle back to that before I hand back to the studio. What you're talking about is that anecdotal evidence. There's a body of data which again might be incomplete because we just haven't had enough research. How do we connect those two so we get a clearer picture of what the state of play is when it comes to that contestation amongst ordinary business owners?
Yeah, I think again it comes down to enforcement. Until there's enforcement, we'll never get the data because, as I said, 90% of the spaza shops are. So I don't know what data we're actually looking for because that's a lived reality. You go and walk around and it's 90% are owned by foreigners. So I don't actually know what more data we actually need. And it's a reality too. You say to them, how do I pay? Pay cash, So that money's leaving the country. So it is a reality. I don't know, we need more data because it is a reality.
Yeah, because we have to. I mean, South Africa is a large country. I think it's over 1 million square kilometers or something. And, whether an experience in Cape Town mirrors an experience in rural KwaZulu-Natal, we have to get to that data so that it allows us also to plan and to understand what the state of that loss is. Alan, thank you for talking to us this morning. The hopes and the aspirations there of ActionSA inside today's budget. We will continue our build-up coverage to the 2 o'clock hour when the Finance Minister reveals all, Michelle.